Greetings and bienvenue, MITZU. Thank you for returning to this broadcast. And welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
Simulated universe. Is there a substantial underlying reality that is unlike our perceptions of the universe, and does this underlying reality need us, or are we forsaken mistakes soon to be senselessly snuffed out of a temporary existence? Also relating to simulation theory. Why would it be a computer simulation like most suppose will be built by a sufficiently advanced civilization? Supposedly, this universe is almost certainly a simulation, as they reason that whatever sentient species develops to a sufficient level first will almost certainly create a simulation that statistically, it is very likely we are in a simulation. I have a couple of problems with that. For one, what if life itself is capable of simulation? What are the chances that somewhere on some ocean planet we are all actually a colony of interconnected jellyfish blob-like creatures hallucinating all of this? Another thing is that if a simulation is really a simulation, I think the following variables should be true. 1. The simulation must depend upon a host to be continued. In other words, our whole universe could blink out if the simulation is stopped, unplugged, whatever. If it can't be stopped, it's not a simulation. 2. The simulation must be escapable. We can't be native to the simulation. If we exist entirely within the simulation is as real as we are. It is our universe. It is not a simulation. 3. If the simulation is perfect such that everything is the same resolution, power, etc., as the real world, then it isn't a simulation but rather an actual universe. For something to be a simulation, it must run at a lower capacity than its host universe, which makes it unlikely that we're living in a simulation of a simulation ad infinitum, because at some point there wouldn't be enough power within a simulated universe to run another simulation. 4. Whoever made our universe is really messed up for making us forget the fact of it being a simulation, and designing the whole thing to produce experiences of such misery and torment as are commonplace in our world. If we were to make a simulation, it would surely be one where we know it's a simulation, and we play it like a game where we can have fun and do whatever we want. This universe is some serious bullshit, which makes me think it's real or a bunch of sadists made it. 5. It could be that every time a civilization tries to make a simulated universe, they instead end up making an actual universe. Presumably, a simulated universe would not contain consciousness. Everyone in it would be a p-zombie. If it has actually self-aware consciousness within it, what is to distinguish it from the real host universe? Consider quantum computing and quantum minds. If our minds are quantum and we are making computers that run on the same quantum processes, then we are in fact making artificial life. What if these computers are little different than hooking up someone's brain to a computer interface and having the organic brain power it? Does it make much difference if it's an organic brain, or like a silicon one, if it uses the same quantum processes? Has anyone considered how likely it is that instead of creating simulations, a sufficiently advanced civilization just creates more actual universes? Anyone read that shit BTW about how every black hole may contain a universe within it? It could be that those trying to make a simulated reality just reproduce a natural process of universal fragmentation where universes spawn new universes.
It could be that every time a civilization tries to make a simulated universe, they instead end up making an actual universe. Presumably, a simulated universe would not contain consciousness. Everyone in it would be a p-zombie. If it has actually self-aware consciousness within it, what is to distinguish it from the real host universe? Consider quantum computing and quantum minds. If our minds are quantum and we are making computers that run on the same quantum processes, then we are in fact making artificial life? What if these computers are little different than hooking up someone's brain to a computer interface and having the organic brain power it? Does it make much difference if it's an organic brain or like a silicon one if it uses the same quantum processes? Having consciousness or not having consciousness, or whether our mind is merely epiphenomenal, has been discussed for millennia in the form of the mind-body question. We're still lacking an answer, but the philosopher Jaegwon Kim has some pretty tough arguments against a mind that has its own causal powers.
The matrix is a realm we create inside our brains. Our minds can never see the realm outside our minds as it is. It reduces it to the universe we perceive at the moment. Electromagnetism creates a link between the external realm and the mental realm. This electromagnetism is the function of our 5 sense organs in our connection with the external world. The objects we see, the food we taste, the sounds we hear, the objects we feel when we touch them, the objects we smell, all of these senses are products of our mind. The external world is full of pure light, perfect. The outer world is right in front of us. It is not outside the sky. It is not somewhere in space or outside the universe. If we could perceive the entire electromagnetic spectrum of light, if we could perceive sound hertz in an unlimited spectrum, we would be living in a completely different realm. The demiurge is an evil being with the body of a snake and the head of a lion living somewhere in the universe. The demiurge is in our own mind. Demiurge is everywhere. In a tree, in a mushroom, in an animal, in a human being, in a star. It is everywhere. In the pure realm there is no evil and no good. There is no sorrow and no joy. This imperfect universe is created. From the conflict between dualities, war arises, hatred arises. But on the contrary, peace can arise and love can arise. One always fills the place of the other. The universe is made of a single essence, ether, mind, energy, matter, or other elements that make up the universe are all manifestations of this single essence.
One time on Whippets, I had a shared experience with a friend of mine. As in, we both had the same surreal thing happen to us. It was after a particularly hard night, emotionally and physically. I felt like I'd given up on life. At the peak, everything dissolved. Every action I made I could see, even the subconscious actions I become consciously aware of. Suddenly I found myself going through every regular movement I make as a person. A look to the right, an adjustment of my jaw until I had no subconscious movements to make. I found myself unable to run, hide, or do anything to oppose this apparent force that was asking me what I wanted to do. For the first time in my life, I genuinely, on a conscious and subconscious level, found myself unable to know what to do. Then everything dissolved, everything. First it was the vision, strings everywhere like static on a TV. Then came the thoughts, my mind, myself. Then came the universe. Everything I could perceive turned into strings, like a trillion dancing dots in front of me, all strings leading to somewhere else. I felt as though in the moment I had the power to touch any string, to change anything in the universe in a heartbeat, and yet of course to be here in the first place, I had to have no other recourse than to do nothing at all. When it cleared, my vision came back and my friend and I talked briefly about WTF just happened with those strings. It's only happened once in my life, but I can still see the mind's eye image of the strings. So many, like blue dots, dancing as the static on a TV does.
I had a similar experience with my conscience. I was sitting in a chair and leaned back. When I did this, the outer part of my vision blurred, as though I was being pulled away from a window that was my vision. Upon this happening, I could feel my subconscious doing its jobs, like making my heart beat. Now, it wasn't simply the feeling of my heart beating, but an actual signal of sorts occurring at a regular pace. It was a bit much since I was feeling every slight command my subconscious made. However, that wasn't the only thing I experienced. Somehow I detached myself from my own consciousness and actually observed my mind trying to make out what it was observing. That being observing my subconscious fulfills its duties. In a sense, I became an eyeball swimming around in my own mind for a brief moment. It was one of the most surreal experiences of my life.
I think they tried to pull you guys out. I had one like that too, but it was simpler. I was sitting there playing Borderlands or something, an FPS I know, and I focuses so intensely on the game I started to feel slight pain in response to my health dropping, basic and almost unnoticeable physical feedback to gameplay. I've been told that's natural for someone who gets as into it as I do. After I was done, I felt like I was still in a game, like I was barely aware of my actions except subtle ones that I was trying to do. When I was trying to get to sleep, I swear I looked at myself in third person and noticed flaws. My arm was longer than I'd ever thought. My eyes weren't moving. My shirt didn't look natural. For a second, things started to fade, but then I fell asleep. When I woke up, everything was normal. If we're in a computerized simulation, I think the system forgot to change my state of mind out of intense video game mode and back into real-life mode.
I think that's pretty normal. Your brain was still stuck in video game mode and got even worse at seeing the difference between the game and real life as you became tired. For example, if I play side-scrollers for too long and then go to bed, all I can see when I close my eyes are scenes from the side-scroller. I guess the human brain tries to adapt to new situations that way.
I've had this weird thing happen when I'm relaxed. It feels really weird. Younger. Shared a room with my sister. I was 5-ish. She was 8. It was daytime. I was in bed. Don't know for how long, but after a while, objects started to shrink and grow. I mean, either shrink massively or grow to an impossible size. For some reason, I saw myself in third person, feel static throughout the entire thing. The objects would reach to the point where their position would be too big or small for them. Just constant. Don't know for how long it lasted. Look over at my sister. She's still on the computer as she always was. The computer, her, and the chair were the only things that weren't shrinking or growing. That's all I remember. It's been happening lately, too. I think the last one was last month. Was trying to get to sleep. And then it happened. Then it just stopped, because I either became aware of it or I fell asleep. Don't remember. Doesn't feel bad or scary, too. I just let it pass.
I sometimes see slightly similar effects during the day. Basically only when I'm in job interviews. For some reason, when I sit in a chair and spend the whole time looking at somebody trying to maintain appearances in the conversation instead of a relaxed, normal conversation, my vision and brain start wonking out. I'll start perceiving the interviewer as being a shitload more distant than they really are. They might be, say, 6 feet away, then suddenly they'll feel 20 feet away and small. My hands and stuff will feel slightly larger, the room will sort of breathe, etc. I'll rub my eyes, do a look around the room to break that staring feeling, and everything will snap back to normal. This only happens during things like interviews. Weird shit, not drugs. I experimented with weed a few times during one summer, but this even happened a year or two before that.
Wake up Saturday morning. Channel flipping because I missed my show. Local news talking about a war with the USA. I don't care. Turn the TV off. My Wii is gone. Okay, weird. I'll play PS2. Nope, it's gone. Head outside to play with the dog. She's gone. The USA flag is gone, and some flag, red, white, and blue, but a red X, blue background, and a white star in the middle is on our flagpole thing. Mom comes home from work. Ask her what the hell is this. She gives me a weird look. Tell her about war with the USA was mentioned on local news. She says she knows. It's been 12 years since it started. WTF? Hear an airplane? She yells at me to get to the basement. Okay? House starts shaking, and things start coming apart. House collapses and dust everywhere. Mom has her leg snapped. I can't breathe well and my head hurts. We get outside. Whole area has been bombed. Uncle comes running by to ask if we are okay. He is our neighbor, so Mom makes sure he's okay too. See a Jeep coming by with the USA flag. Uncle tells me to get down. Go lay in a ditch near the road because WTF is happening. They open fire on my uncle. Troop sees me, shoots me, and hits me, on the ground in pain. Some USA troop comes by. Help me. He pulls out a pistol, looks at me, and screams, "Fuck you and fuck the Confederacy." Next thing I know, I'm laying in the ditch across from our house. Everything's back to normal. I forgot to mention I live in Alabama, but did I somehow experience like a universe travel? No one believes me. I was 19 at the time.
I think we should all be able to agree that at some point the technology will be there to simulate the universe, including every living thing. The advances in computing simply make it inevitable. It could be 100 years or 50. It doesn't matter. It's just that it will. Someone in that simulation will ask, "Is this a simulation?" And be correct. It will be. There will be no way to really know. It's not like they're The Sims. There is no one on the other side manipulating them, maybe, but mostly RNG. The problem we have is that moment could be right now. We could be a simulation and we'd never know. Again, someone will ask this and be correct. Why not us now?
Prove we're in a simulation. Any evidence at all is also appreciated.
Who cares if we are? What is real? What is a simulation? If a simulation is all we've known, then it is real to us. All reality is a construct. Doesn't mean it's not real when we experience it. This questioning is pointless.
It may be pointless, but it could also explain the supernatural. Things like UFO and ghost sightings could be injected as a reaction, just to appease/X/. The real question would be, can we prove it, and what would we do if we did? What effect would it have on free will? It would philosophically change the way we live. It would have to. A technologically mature post-human civilization would have enormous computing power. Based on this empirical fact, the simulation argument shows that at least one of the following propositions is true. 1. The fraction of human-level civilizations that reach a post-human stage is very close to 0. 2. The fraction of post-human civilizations that are interested in running ancestor simulations is very close to 0. 3. The fraction of all people with our kind of experiences that are living in a simulation is very close to 1. If 1 is true, then we will almost certainly go extinct before reaching post-humanity. If 2 is true, then there must be a strong convergence among the courses of advanced civilizations so that virtually none contain any relatively wealthy individuals who desire to run ancestor simulations and are free to do so. If 3 is true, then we almost certainly live in a simulation. In the dark forest of our current ignorance, it seems sensible to apportion one's credence roughly evenly between 1, 2, and 3. Unless we are now living in a simulation, our descendants will almost certainly never run an ancestor simulation.
Technology will progress to that point if we need it to progress to that point. The only use I can see for it is military training or video game NPCs. But we already have NPCs that do not have complex thoughts. There isn't a logical need to have a complex game as big as Earth, as it would be a huge waste of data to have billions of subplots in your story. Will simulated reality happen? Definitely. Will it ever become logical to create whole worlds full of AIs as complex as humans? Doubtful, but I suppose can't be ruled out.
Why would it be created? Keep in mind that it wouldn't have to be in real time. What we consider the span of lifetime could be run 1,000 times a second with many variables. Say outside of the simulation, it's the year 2532. We want to simulate multiple variables to see where we went wrong or right, how things would be different if someone died or lived. You have to consider the butterfly effect and how it would play into a simulation like this. Let's say they're simulating things to know how to correct the future, that they have the ability to manipulate the real past, but need to know the outcomes. Sure, it's science fiction to us, but oftentimes that's a pretty good predictor of the future or what it could be. I'm not saying any of this has consequences for us, but it's interesting to me that this will happen eventually, and that it may or may not be us, and we'll never likely know.
Well, I heard a legend when I was much younger. It was about an older gentleman, not that many friends. He had his pains from a war. He was an engineer ahead of his time. He invented a little flying mag, a hummingbird, so he would go into the light white room made of special fabric and the hummingbird would be programmed. Its sound, its light, and its flap would turn that room into a virtual world where he'd relive his youth all over again, coping with his losses. The hummingbird would say a statement at the entry of different chapters of his life. While that thing was on, you'd become completely desensitized to the real-time reality, so a timer had to be set. The problem with virtual reality is the sentiments of the people around versus your own. That's when the math gets hard.
Actually, we do know. The fact that space and time are discrete, like mass and energy, is a huge tell. In other words, if the universe were truly infinite, the resolution would be infinitesimal. But it's not. The resolution of space and time is the Planck scale. It is because of this discrete nature of space-time that there is a dominance of matter over antimatter. In theory, they should have been generated in equal amounts and cancelled each other out in the beginning. but there was more matter, and matter won. The only way spontaneous symmetry breaking like this can be explained is because this universe may be a discrete event simulation by God. In an information-theoretic sense, we are correlations without correlata, meaning we are bits.
The purpose might be many. Whoever runs the computer, or if it is the computer, could be one entity living through each of our perspectives at the same time, a single mind of growing computational power and intelligence that inhabits all of our experiences and all of the future ones of the growing population so that it can learn and fulfilling itself. Another thought is that this could be how intelligent egos are created in the future. Life is artificial intelligence, but it must be born out of an experience like this one, or many experiences, in order to emerge an independent intelligence for whatever purpose. Many possibilities I've only just started thinking about.
All provable physics started off as a mathematically consistent theory before experimental proof. Special relativity, general relativity, quantum theory, QCD are all examples of this. String theory doesn't have experimental proof, but it's both mathematically consistent and fits quantum theory and relativity together. So it's the leading contender for the next big theory.
What you're saying about pure math paving the way for more sophisticated experiments is true, but string theory is garbage. String theorists lack discipline. When the scientists who devised the foundation for what is today known as the Standard Model, they were very conservative with adding new variables. They knew that each variable introduces a new element of uncertainty that would have to be solved later, as per the rules of dimensional analysis. Modern scientists don't care if their equations don't match the experimental observations. They just willy-nilly add in invisible dimensions and non-verifiable bandage constants to make these terrible, functionless masses of irrelevant information with zero predictive power. Dark matter was a perfect example of this. Rather than correct the theory of gravitation, they just added in a bunch of new data points to fix the data. This is the antithesis of the scientific method. You can't go anywhere from there. It's solipsism. String theory does the same nonsense with invisible dimensions that have bizarre topologies designed to perfectly fix their equations. It's just a game at this point, to keep getting funding so they can go to college and work on science, never making a single step forward in the direction of progress. Their theories have all the efficacy of poetry. And you know why? Because string theory isn't pure math. They're not coming up with new logical paradigms to measure the universe by, just reusing some very old ones over and over and over again. The pure mathematicians of today's generation are largely computer scientists who have diverted their attention from spatial geometric structures to Diophantine networked linguistic structures. From this comes all the metaphors of the matrix being a place in a computer. Computer science represents the only new scientific field to experience discovery in decades.
Per the laws of physics, as the universe comes to an end at this singularity in a particular form of the Big Crunch, the computational capacity of the universe, in terms of both its processor speed and memory storage, increases unlimitedly with a hyperbolic growth rate as the radius of the universe collapses to zero, allowing an infinite number of bits to be processed and stored before the end of spacetime. Via this supertask, a simulation run on this cosmological computer can thereby continue forever in its own terms, that is, in computer clock time or experiential time, even though the universe lasts only a finite amount of proper time. The known laws of physics require there be intelligent civilizations in existence at the appropriate time in order to force the collapse of the universe and then manipulate its collapse so that the computational capacity of the universe can diverge to infinity. Due to the increasing temperature of the universe during the collapse phase, wherein the temperature diverges to infinity, life will have to transfer its information processes to higher energy states, eventually using elementary particles to directly compute via traveling waves and standing waves. Bear with me. As the radius of the universe goes to zero, the matter energy of the universe goes to positive infinity, one thereby allowing the number of particle states in which to store information to diverge to infinity. The omega point final singularity and its state of infinite informational capacity is by definition God, due to it having all the Hexaides claimed for God by the traditional religions. The implication of the omega point cosmology for present-day humans is that the cosmic scale computer close in proper time to the omega point will be able to run computer emulations which are perfectly accurate down to the quantum level of every physically possible universe and of any life contained in them, from the start of the Big Bang, which starts at zero informational capacity and diverges to infinite informational capacity as the universe progresses in time, thereby allowing sufficiently later states of the universe to perfectly render earlier states. The recreated inhabitants at the states near the omega point will thereby be resurrected in an infinite duration afterlife, which can take any imaginable form due to its computer-rendered nature. Last one. The interstellar colonization phase required for achieving the omega point will be accomplished by naturally evolved sapient life forms, with such species independently evolved on average roughly every Hubble Volume 2, whose brains have been transformed with nanotechnology into artificial computers, such as quantum computers, onboard tiny starships of circa 1 kilogram that will exponentially colonize space many times faster than mortal human beings. The incredible expense of keeping flesh and blood humans alive in space makes it highly improbable that such humans will ever personally travel to other stars. Instead, highly efficient substrate transformations of naturally evolved sapient minds and artificial intelligences will spread civilization throughout space. Given the rate of exponential growth of human technological development, this colonization phase should likely start before 2100. Small spaceships under heavy acceleration up to relativistic speeds can then reach nearby stars in less than a decade. In 1 million years, these superintelligent self-replicating spacecraft will have completely colonized the Milky Way galaxy. In 100 million years, the Virgo supercluster will be colonized. From that point on, the entire visible universe will be engulfed by these sapient spaceships as it approaches the point of maximum expansion. The final singularity of the omega point itself will be reached between 1018 and 1019 years of proper time, that is 1 quintillion to 10 quintillion years, using the US short-scale convention for names of large numbers.
Okay, it goes like this: world leaders hate people freaking out. They can't stand knee-jerk reactions and would like to know what to do if X happens, from natural disasters to political debates. Many simulations are running parallel at the same time that they base AIs off of social media activity and public records. They simulate the neural network and all physics to make not only the mind, but the body act as if it were real. Timelines don't all get purged when the task is completed, and there is a process by which new ones are made for different actions, and compressing them back into one timeline with the result chosen by world leaders. This doesn't count encapsulated event simulations, which are more common and not added to the timeline, like World War III or for them maybe World War V. These use real-world data and AIs with behavior profiles matching real-world leaders. While it may seem like insanity, the technological limitation is a myth. Quantum computing and massive parallel processor arrays do more than people 30 years ago thought was possible. In 100 years, through sheer scale and decreases in the cost of technology, they could do what I am stating, not even counting a new data compression method. Shorthand for physics affecting multiple objects specifically, so they are not computing the movement of single grains of sand, but clumps that can separate and rejoin the webbing and seem to each be affected individually, like a membrane that morphs and can break into smaller ones down to single units, so they have the power for that, and people and wind or water currents, etc.
This guy gets it. The Matrix isn't a place you go into. It's an off-site location that models your activity. If you're in the Matrix, it means that you're acting in a way that co-aligns with the certain subterranean processors that also connect to your daily life in some kind automated sequence of events, which should not be difficult to imagine at this level of technological abundance in society. Do you ever think about how many of your actions in life are the result of some ones and zeros that happen to occur on some Wall Street trading program that creates or destroys entire business structures based on some database exchanges? That's the idea. It's been a massive project. This was the solution developed to the problem of what will happen in the future. It turns out that any place in the universe capable of answering that question becomes a bit less sentient in the process. It turns out that answering that question is all what sentience ever was. But we can't exactly start teaching this in schools right now, until the public learns of it of their own accord and distributes the information by word of mouth, to the point where everyone is comfortable with the idea. For various reasons, coming to this realization needs to be a voluntary action. For example, I could post this information to 4chan even in a universe where such a networked array of predictive modeling programs was not yet manufactured and operational. Hence, the decision to engage with such a matrix, which may or may not exist, remains the choice of the users. This is fair, right?
I think simulation friends miss the point of why their theory sounds ridiculous. Not because it sounds implausible, but because out of all the possible scenarios and explanations, that's the one you went with. The most simple, cookie-cutter, product of the time you live in answer to everything. It doesn't even say a whole lot. What the fuck does simulated mean when the simulation is so complete that it might as well be reality? It means nothing. As far as you or I know, there's no realer reality to compare it to. And even if there was, who's to say that's not also a simulation? How deep did you think this through? Did you just watch The Matrix one day and think, yeah, I'm gonna loosely base my perception of reality on the ideas espoused in this film, but on a really shallow level that doesn't hold up to 3 minutes of critical thinking? Okay, we live in a simulation. Gravity still exists. The universe is still mostly a giant void of nothing, and if somebody punches you in the nose, it still bleeds and you still feel pain. Move on.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel, as more Greentext will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.